In cooperation with the South Central Community Action Program, Ivy Tech Bloomington hosted a poverty simulation as the kickoff event for their 2009-2010 Common Reading Project. The chosen text for the Common Reading Project was The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls, who experienced many hardships while growing up in poverty. The poverty simulation experience gave participants the chance to live for a month with very limited funds and resources, and to deal with the challenges associated with poverty. Several volunteers from the Community Action Program, the Circles Initiative, and Ivy Tech staffed the bank, the grocery store, the pawn shop, and the quick cash station. Others helped out as social services workers, teachers, and security officers. Approximately 70 students took part in the simulation. Participants were grouped into families who would live and work together for the month. Some families consisted of 3 generations. Some had babies to take care of, and others were single people living alone. At the beginning of the exercise, participants were given an inventory of their possessions. Some owned appliances, furniture, and perhaps a piece of jewelry. Others had much less to start with, and even found themselves beginning the experience in a homeless shelter. After listening carefully to the instructions, participants started their first week in poverty. School-age children had to spend time in school and were even assigned homework. Parents with infants and toddlers had to get their children to daycare. Adults with jobs had to go to work, and others had to seek employment. The paychecks were nice, some even got raises, but most found that it still wasn't nearly enough to pay all of their bills. Services and resources often taken for granted, like bank accounts and reliable transportation, were suddenly not available. Without direct deposit, participants found themselves wasting precious time waiting in line at the bank to cash a check. Relatively simple items like transportation passes became a precious commodity. Some, but not all, had enough time and money to get to the grocery store and buy enough food for the family. A lucky few even had some cash to take home. Others didn't fare as well and tried to pawn precious belongings, but found that they couldn't get near the true cash value of the item. Others went seeking quick cash but found that the loans came with astronomical interest rates. Families unable to pay their mortgage or rent found themselves evicted. Some even ended up in jail. Others sought help from social services. Those lucky enough to get an individual appointment often found that they didn't have the proper documents with them, and so they had to make another trip, using up precious time and transportation resources. Some of those evicted were children, some with special needs. Most of the children said that they felt neglected. Some cheated and stole, some dropped out of school, and some were expelled. Some joined gangs and tried to sell drugs. Most families found themselves to be much worse off at the end of the month than they were at the beginning. Only about half of the families were able to pay their rent or mortgage on time. Less than half of the families were able to keep their utilities on. About 1/4 of the families were able to make all their required payments. Less than 1/4 of the families were able to purchase enough food for the family. None reported being able to spend quality time with their children. But in the midst of it all, a few good things happened. Most participants will likely remember the hope in the voice of the man who had finally found a job and would be able to help support his family. The kindness of the 85-year-old widow who babysat her neighbor's children for free so the parents could go to work. And the generosity of the 15-year-old who used her own paycheck to buy her family's groceries. Overall, most participants found the simulation to be an enlightening experience. Unfortunately, the scenarios experienced here represented real families with real problems. Most participants involved made a commitment to help win the war against poverty.